that has left two children without their mother this afternoon. Now, we talked to the victim's cousin. According to him, the victim came to this home here to tell her boyfriend she was pregnant with his child. Now, she got into an altercation with the man's girlfriend who shot and killed her. The shooter fled the scene but was apprehended by police a short time later. Now, according to the victim's cousin, the victim had reportedly come to the home to tell her boyfriend she was pregnant. Now, that man's other girlfriend showed up at the house. The two women got into an argument. The victim's cousin said that is when the suspect shot the pregnant woman, killing her.
He was seeing a female earlier today, and he told the female that he was going to his mom's house. While the female left, he told my cousin to come back. While my cousin was here, the female had came and she knocked on the door. Her and the female got into an altercation, which led to him and my cousin getting into an altercation, and then the female shot my cousin in the head, and she passed away.
It was 12:45 a.m. in Rockdale County, Georgia, when 24-year-old Kyla Cooper pulled up to a quiet house on Golfview Terrace SE. She wasn't there for confrontation. According to those close to her, she came to share life-changing news with a man she believed she loved, a man named Rashad Thompson. But what she didn't know was that another woman was already inside that house archeotate, a woman who also claimed Rashad's affection. Minutes after Kyla arrived, the peaceful street echoed with a single gunshot. By the time deputies reached the scene, Kyla Cooper was dead from a single bullet wound to the head. Inside the home, confusion, silence, and questions lingered. Tate fled, but was quickly captured. She now faces charges of felony murder, aggravated assault, and firearm possession during a felony. Reports quickly spread across Georgia. Was this murder sparked by jealousy, betrayal, or something deeper? Early rumors said Kyla was pregnant. But days later, investigators confirmed the autopsy found no pregnancy. That revelation shifted the conversation. Was this really about love or control? Witness statements mention arguing, shouting, and confrontation moments before the gunshot. Yet, no one can clearly describe what triggered that final moment. The community remains divided. Some believe it was premeditated. Others say it was a heated fight gone wrong. One thing is certain. A young mother lost her life, two children lost their mother, and a web of secrets unraveled inside a single Georgia home. It was shortly after midnight in Conyers, Georgia. A quiet neighborhood on Golfview Terrace SE was about to witness something it had never seen before. A confrontation that would end one woman's life and divide a community. A 24-year-old mother named Kyla Cooper arrived at a home she believed would be a safe place. She came to talk. She came to share news she thought would change her life forever. But inside that house, another woman waited for Archeotate, who claimed to be in a relationship with the same man Kyla was there to see. Within minutes, the sound of a single gunshot broke the silence. Deputies would later describe the scene as domestic in nature, but the public wasn't satisfied with that explanation. What happened in those final minutes? Why did Kyla go there that night? Was this a crime of passion, or was she walking into a setup that was planned long before she arrived? At the center of this story are three names: Kyla Cooper, the victim; Rashad Thompson, the man both women were connected to; and Archeotate, the woman accused of pulling the trigger. Kyla Cooper was 24 years old, living in Georgia, and the mother of two young daughters. Those who knew her described her life as centered on family. She wasn't known to seek attention, rarely shared details of her personal life, and appeared to focus on raising her children and maintaining a quiet existence. She lived a routine life, balancing motherhood and work. There's no record of criminal activity, no documented trouble in her background. By all accounts, she represented an ordinary young mother trying to build stability in a world that often makes that difficult. Her relationship with Rashad Thompson, however, appeared to complicate her peace. Reports indicate she had been romantically involved with him for some time. Friends later stated that Kyla believed their relationship was exclusive. Yet, social circles close to Rashad suggested otherwise, that he had ongoing connections with other women, one of whom was Archeotate. Kyla reportedly kept most of her relationship private. Few people around her knew much about the depth of her involvement with Rashad or the challenges she faced in that relationship. Social media showed brief glimpses of her life, photos of her daughters, motivational posts, and occasional mentions of faith and family. There is nothing to suggest she would soon become the subject of a homicide investigation. In her community, Kyla was seen as young, determined, and responsible. She wasn't known to engage in conflict or public drama. But that quiet image would soon collide with a dangerous reality, one that ended her life before sunrise on June 20th, 2024. Rashad Thompson is the central male figure in this story. He was involved with both women Kyla Cooper and Arkia Tate. His background paints a picture of someone living a complex personal life. Reports indicate Rashad had prior interactions with both women that overlapped. It's unclear whether he ever defined his relationship with Kyla as committed. However, Kyla's decision to visit him that night implies there was a level of personal connection she believed was genuine. Rashad's connection with Arkia Tate adds another dimension. Investigators confirmed Arkia was present in the same house when Kyla arrived. This means Rashad was physically with one woman while another, who had a history with him, appeared at his door unexpectedly. Neighbors later mentioned that Rashad's home had been the site of multiple visitors and that there were prior arguments between women connected to him. While these are statements, not verified evidence, they contribute to the atmosphere surrounding this incident, an atmosphere of overlapping relationships, miscommunication, and tension. There are no verified criminal records that indicate Rashad's direct involvement in violent acts before this event. However, his name would become linked to the case through his association with both women and his presence at the scene. He was later detained on unrelated charges after Kyla's death. But the question many asked was simple. Could Rashad's actions, silence, or divided loyalties have indirectly caused the deadly confrontation? Arkia Tate is the second woman in this triangle and the one charged with pulling the trigger. Public records show she was also in a relationship with Rashad Thompson. Her presence in the house on the night of June 20th placed her directly at the center of the investigation. Investigators confirmed that when Kyla arrived, an argument began almost immediately between the two women. Witnesses described raised voices and tension inside the house before a gunshot was heard. The sequence of events was brief, likely less than a few minutes between confrontation and death. Police reports identify Arkia as the person who fired the weapon. After the shooting, she fled the scene but was later apprehended by Rockdale County deputies. She was charged with felony murder, aggravated assault, and possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. There is limited public information about her background prior to this incident. Social media traces show a woman who appeared active online, posting about personal life and relationships, but nothing that foreshadowed a violent act. However, sources close to the case suggested Arkia was aware of Kyla's connection to Rashad and that previous tension existed between them. Motive indicators point to jealousy and confrontation. Investigators believe Kyla's unexpected visit, possibly to share personal news, may have triggered an emotional reaction. Early reports stated that Kyla went to the house to tell Rashad she was pregnant, though the coroner later found no evidence of pregnancy in the autopsy. This conflicting detail created public speculation. Was the pregnancy story a misunderstanding or part of the argument that fueled the violence? Despite the charges, Arkia has maintained her innocence, with legal representation claiming self-defense or provocation as potential defenses. The prosecution, however, has argued that the crimes stem from jealousy and emotional impulse, supported by witness statements and forensic findings that suggest an intentional act. The details of this case leave more questions than answers. Why did Kyla choose that night to visit Rashad's home? Did she know another woman was inside? Could the situation have been avoided if communication had been clearer? Was this a premeditated act of jealousy or a moment of uncontrolled emotion? And most importantly, what role did Rashad's actions play in setting the stage for that fatal confrontation? The investigation continues, but the facts are straightforward. A young mother went to share important news. Another woman felt threatened or betrayed. A man stood in the middle of both lives. One gunshot ended the conflict, but started a chain of questions that still have no complete answers. The Conyers community continues to search for clarity, while the justice system determines who bears ultimate responsibility for the death of Kyla Cooper, whose midnight visit turned into a permanent silence. In the 48 hours before June 20th, 2024, 24-year-old Kyla Cooper's movements began to shift from routine to purposeful. Records indicate that she was communicating with Rashad Thompson, the man she had been seeing on and off for several months. Multiple sources later told investigators that Kyla believed she might be pregnant and wanted to tell Rashad in person. According to one close acquaintance, she said she intended to clear the air and speak directly to him. It remains uncertain whether Rashad knew she was coming that night. Phone records show missed calls and messages from Kyla to Rashad earlier in the evening, but there is no confirmation that he replied. Investigators later retrieved partial text exchanges that hinted at tension between them. These messages referenced another woman, Arkia Tate, though none explicitly mentioned violence or threats. Over the 2 days prior to the shooting, Kyla's online activity also changed. She made no new social media posts, but was observed viewing profiles associated with both Rashad and Arkia. A review of her call log revealed short calls and several unsent draft messages. Friends interviewed later said Kyla seemed distracted but gave no indication of fear. Reports suggest Arkia and Kyla had previous confrontations, mostly verbal. People close to both described their conflict as ongoing and linked to Rashad's involvement with each of them. No police reports were filed in those earlier disputes. Investigators later examined digital data from Kyla's phone. Certain messages hinted that she expected a confrontation, but still intended to visit. She allegedly told a friend she wanted closure. The timing of her arrival, shortly after midnight, was confirmed by neighborhood surveillance cameras. The footage captured her vehicle turning onto Golfview Terrace SE at approximately 12:43 a.m. Neighbors would later recall hearing voices moments before the gunshot. Some reported what sounded like a short argument inside the residence, followed by silence, and then one loud noise. None reported hearing multiple shots or a prolonged struggle. At around 12:45 a.m., Kyla Cooper entered the residence on Golfview Terrace SE in Rockdale County, Georgia. The home was occupied by Rashad Thompson and Arkia Tate. Law enforcement later established that Kyla entered through an unlocked front door. Inside the house, the three individuals' interaction was brief. Evidence from witness accounts and forensic reconstruction suggests that the encounter escalated almost immediately. The exact dialogue is unknown, but reports describe raised voices and accusations exchanged between Kyla and Arkia. The argument centered on Rashad's relationship with both women. During the confrontation, Rashad reportedly attempted to separate them. Witness statements differ on whether he left the room before or after the weapon was drawn. The weapon used was a handgun recovered at the scene. Forensic tests confirmed it was fired once. The shot struck Kyla Cooper in the head at close range. The projectile trajectory indicated that the firearm was discharged from within a few feet. The impact caused instantaneous incapacitation. When deputies arrived, Kyla was found unresponsive on the living room floor. The 911 call was placed moments after the shot. Responders reached the residence within minutes, but Kyla had no pulse. Paramedics confirmed death on scene. The interior scene showed no signs of a prolonged struggle. One overturned chair and a broken phone were noted. The firearm was found near a doorway. Spent casing and gunpowder residue were collected for testing. Witnesses outside the home described hearing only one loud sound. A neighbor, awakened by the noise, looked outside, but saw no one fleeing at that moment. Surveillance footage from nearby houses later confirmed that a vehicle matching Arkia Tate's description departed shortly afterward. Deputies secured the residence and began preliminary questioning. Rashad was present, but visibly shaken and cooperative. Arkia was no longer on the premises. The area was taped off and treated as a homicide scene. Following the shooting, Arkia Tate left the scene in her personal vehicle. Law enforcement used license plate recognition data to track her route. Within hours, officers located her at an acquaintance's home in a neighboring county. She was taken into custody without resistance. Authorities publicly identified Tate as the primary suspect within the first 12 hours. She was booked on 3 charges. 1. Felony murder. 2. Aggravated assault. 3. Possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. Rockdale County Sheriff's Office released a brief statement characterizing the shooting as a domestic-related incident driven by jealousy and confrontation. No additional suspects were sought. Meanwhile, Rashad Thompson was detained later the same day on unrelated legal matters, though investigators clarified he was not charged in connection with Kyla's death. He was questioned extensively regarding the events of that night, the relationships between all. Laboratory results on fingerprints and residue from the firearm aligned with Tate's direct handling of the weapon. No other prints were identified. The investigation concluded with a clear chain of events: an unplanned late-night visit, confrontation between 2 women connected to the same man, and a single fatal gunshot. Prosecutors prepared the case for trial, labeling it a domestic violence homicide. The findings established motive, physical evidence, and digital corroboration without ambiguity regarding the shooter's identity. As proceedings moved forward, law enforcement maintained the position that the crimes stemmed from a volatile personal dispute rather than premeditated planning. The documentation and forensic reports provided the foundation for the felony murder charge against Arkia Tate. In the days following Kyla Cooper's death, information spread rapidly across Georgia and on national platforms. The details of the case of a young mother killed after a midnight visit to her partner's home ignited widespread discussion. Within hours, social media users began sharing the story with the hashtag Justice for Kyla Cooper, demanding clarity on what truly happened that night in Rockdale County. Online discussions split into several directions. One group of users focused on the recurring theme of jealousy-fueled violence. They questioned how often domestic relationships end in fatal confrontations and why warning signs are often ignored. Another group emphasized the love triangle element, examining how secrecy, overlapping relationships, and emotional instability can lead to irreversible consequences. Domestic violence advocates use the case to highlight a broader issue: that early intervention in relationship disputes can prevent escalation. Community members in Rockdale County expressed collective disbelief. Local residents described the incident as unexpected and quietly devastating for such a suburban neighborhood. Local reporters covered the story extensively, often revisiting the crime scene and interviewing neighbors who recalled hearing a single gunshot in the middle of the night. Law enforcement's early statements confirmed that the altercation appeared domestic in nature, but investigators did not publicly assign motive beyond the confrontation between Kyla Cooper and Arkia Tate. Some residents claimed that Kyla had privately mentioned concerns about tension between her and another woman connected to Rashad Thompson. Although those statements were not officially verified, they added weight to the theory that fear of confrontation may have existed before the incident. The sheriff's office did not confirm whether Kyla had filed any prior complaints or warnings. Media coverage questioned the timing and reason for Kyla's late-night visit. Reports that she came to share personal news, possibly a pregnancy, intensified public interest. When investigators later clarified that autopsy findings showed no pregnancy, speculation shifted again from a case of emotional shock to possible premeditation or provocation. Journalists began asking whether Tate was aware Kyla was coming and if the confrontation was expected. Analysts on news outlets debated 2 main questions. Could this have been prevented? And was it a spontaneous act or a calculated decision? Some experts argued that jealousy-driven crimes often occur impulsively. Others stated that the act of bringing or using a firearm suggested forethought. These differing views kept the case circulating in headlines for weeks. By the 3rd week, the focus turned to legal developments and the upcoming court proceedings. But the conversation online remained consistent: a demand for answers, accountability, and justice for Kyla Cooper. The legal process began shortly after the arrest of Arkia Tate. She appeared before a Rockdale County judge for her initial hearing and entered a plea of not guilty. Prosecutors outlined the state's charges: felony murder, aggravated assault, and possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. Evidence presented during preliminary sessions included forensic reports, witness accounts, and phone records recovered from all parties involved. Statements indicated that Kyla Cooper and Tate engaged in a verbal dispute that escalated rapidly. Investigators confirmed that only one shot was fired, and ballistics matched the weapon found near the residence, which was connected to Tate. Witness testimonies came from neighbors who reported hearing loud arguing before the gunshot and from responding deputies who described the immediate aftermath. One neighbor told investigators that they saw a woman leaving the property in haste moments after the noise. The sheriff's office verified that Tate fled but was arrested within hours. The defense strategy focused on claims of self-defense or provocation. Defense attorneys argued that the confrontation was initiated by Kyla and that Tate's actions were a reaction to feeling threatened. They presented this as a domestic altercation that escalated unexpectedly rather than an intentional killing. The prosecution, however, argued that the act was driven by jealous intent and emotional rage. Prosecutors highlighted that Tate had possession of a firearm, suggesting readiness to act. They contended that the situation stemmed from ongoing romantic conflict and that Tate's decision to use lethal force indicated clear awareness of the potential consequences. Rashad Thompson was called to testify about his involvement with both women. His account centered on the fact that both relationships overlapped and that he did not expect Kyla to visit that night. Prosecutors questioned whether he had prior knowledge of the confrontation or played a role in escalating tensions. The defense attempted to limit his testimony, emphasizing that the case centered solely on Tate's actions. No sentencing or final judgment was reached at the time of the most recent updates. The case remains in progress, with additional hearings scheduled. The state continues to build a narrative of intentional violence, while the defense maintains that the shooting resulted from panic during an unplanned altercation. Court observers noted that this case reflects a broader legal challenge in domestic homicide investigations, distinguishing between spontaneous violence and premeditated murder when strong emotions and overlapping relationships are involved. Following the death of Kyla Cooper, her two young daughters were placed under the care of close family members. Relatives avoided public statements but cooperated with investigators. In the wider community, the case became a reference point for discussions about domestic and relationship-related violence. Nonprofit organizations and awareness campaigns use the event to highlight early intervention strategies and the importance of recognizing warning signs of jealousy, control, or hostility in romantic relationships. While law enforcement completed the initial investigation, multiple questions remain unanswered. What specifically triggered the argument that night? Was Kyla aware that another woman was in the home? Was Tate's firearm already loaded and accessible, or did she retrieve it after the argument began? The available evidence does not clearly show who escalated the situation first. Another unresolved issue concerns Rashad Thompson's role. Though not charged with any direct involvement in the shooting, public discussion continues to examine whether his actions or lack of communication indirectly contributed to the outcome. Analysts question whether clearer boundaries or honesty could have prevented the confrontation entirely. For many following the case, the most persistent question remains whether the shooting was a moment of uncontrolled rage or a deliberate execution rooted in jealousy. Without clear evidence of premeditation, the legal outcome will likely depend on forensic interpretation, digital communication logs, and the credibility of witness testimony. The story concludes not with resolution, but with a reminder of the consequences that arise from fractured relationships and hidden conflict. Communities across Georgia now cite the Cooper case when discussing the importance of mediation, transparency, and conflict de-escalation in personal relationships. To close the narrative and maintain engagement, these are the direct questions presented to the audience for thought and discussion. Was Kyla's late-night visit an act of trust or a fatal mistake? Do you believe jealousy alone can push a person to commit murder? Or is there always another underlying factor? Should Rashad Thompson be held morally accountable, even if the law finds him innocent of direct involvement? What warning signs were visible? And how could they have been addressed before tragedy occurred? Was this a single act of impulse, or was it building over time, one argument at a time? Could this case have ended differently if any of the three individuals had chosen to walk away that night? The case of Kyla Cooper remains one of Georgia's most discussed domestic homicide incidents of 2024. It illustrates how quickly confrontation can turn lethal when communication fails and jealousy dominates. The unanswered questions keep the public's attention fixed on the upcoming court decisions, as many continue to ask, what truly happened on Golfview Terrace SE, and will the full truth ever be known?